In this video, I will summarize a book called The Road to Ruin: The Global Elite's Secret Plan for the Next Financial Crisis. This book explains how this crisis is going to end and what you can do to protect yourself. The book is written by Jim Rickards, who is one of my favorite economists. The name of the book sounds like a conspiracy theory, but the content is far from that. In order to understand why Jim wrote such a book, you have to first understand who Jim Rickards is, besides being an economist and scientist. For many years, Jim has worked as a lawyer with an elite group of people who run the most powerful financial organizations on the planet, such as the Central Bank of America, also known as the Fed, the International Monetary Fund, Wall Street, etc. When certain laws are passed, it is very difficult for an ordinary person to understand the implications. But as a lawyer and economist, Jim can see the purpose behind them and their effects on the world economy. The author says that global elites have a plan, and this plan does not involve you. It involves your wealth. For many people, global elites are a group of mysterious people who wear hoodies and sit around a round table to discuss the future of the world. But according to the author, it's not a secret who these people are. They are the central bankers of big countries, finance ministers, and academics. He even names them in the book. The thing I love about the author is that he never makes a statement that is not backed by science, data, and evidence. I will summarize the book in 3 parts. First, I will explain why we are in a crisis today. Second, how it will all end, and what is the end game. And finally, what actions you can take to protect yourself. Part 1. In order to understand why we are in trouble today, the author analyzes 2 crises that happened in the near past, 1998 and 2008. Many people know about 2008, but not about 1998. In 1998, one of the biggest hedge funds, called Long-Term Capital Management, made a lot of risky investments in derivatives and was about to cause a major financial crisis. When Wall Street and the Central Bank of America realized the seriousness of the problem, they had to save the hedge fund. Otherwise, major banks would collapse like a domino. The author was one of the people in the room who actually put the deal together to avoid the crash. Jim says the world was hours away from a major collapse. The main cause of the 98 crash was derivatives. I'm sure right now you're saying, what the hell is this derivative? Well, simply put, derivatives are just sophisticated forms of gambling. For example, let's say I borrow 10,000 euro from your friend. After the transition is done and we all sign the paperwork, I call you and say, hey, would you like to bet that I will pay back all your friend's money? If you agree to bet, a derivative is created. A derivative is a bet about the future price or probability of something. It is created out of thin air. It is non-transparent, non-regulated, and has no limit in size. According to Warren Buffett, derivatives are weapons of mass destruction. If we learned our lesson in 1998 and got rid of derivatives, we would not have the 2008 crash, but as you know, it did not happen, and the rest is history. In 2008, the problem was much bigger, so the Fed had to step in and save the banks and major financial institutions. The Fed reduced interest rates to 0 and increased its balance sheet from $850 billion to over $4 trillion. After the crisis, if they reduced their balance sheet back to the same level and increased the interest rates, I would say, great, guys, you went into debt to save the world, and when the crisis was over, you paid it back. But that didn't happen. Like ordinary people, governments also borrow at bad times and pay it back at good times. But it seems like we have forgotten about this simple rule. To say it differently, in 2008, a patient had a heart attack and the doctor used all the medicine and did not refill the medicine box. Today, the patient's health is much worse than before and the doctor has no medicine. Some people say, well, what is the problem? We stopped the crash in 2008 by printing money. Why not print it again? It's not backed by anything. You can print as much as you want. Well, it is true that there is no gold or silver backing up any of the currencies today, but there is one important thing behind every currency in the world, and that is confidence. The only reason you accept my peso, euro, or dollar is because you trust that when you go shopping, the cashier will accept it from you. If you keep printing, people will eventually lose confidence. And confidence is a very fragile thing. Once it's lost, you can't regain it. If you keep printing money, people will say, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with what's going on. Just get me out of this paper and give me something tangible. Now you might say to yourself, this is stupid. Why have we not learned the lesson? Why do we keep doing the same things? According to the author, one of the main reasons is that economic models that are being used today are outdated. If you use the wrong model, you will always get the wrong result. If the models developed by Keynes were working, it does not mean that they will work today as well. Economics is a science, and in science, things change constantly. I will give you one example where you can see for yourself how some of the models are outdated. For example, when I was studying at university, I learned about the Phillips curve in my macroeconomics course. According to the Phillips curve, there is a negative relationship between unemployment and inflation, which means when unemployment goes down, inflation must go up. But it does not hold true most of the time. You can observe it by yourself if you look at the economy. Part 2. How the crisis is going to end. Financial markets are complex, dynamic systems like the ones you see in nature, such as earthquakes. When an earthquake happens, energy must be released. You can't stop an earthquake in the middle when it is happening. But for a second, imagine that you can stop the earthquake. If you could stop it, then energy would not disappear. It would just stay there and be released eventually. The same thing applies to financial markets. In 2008, we just stopped the financial earthquake in the middle. But that doesn't mean that energy disappeared. It will be released. As you can see, each crisis gets bigger than the previous one. In 1998, Wall Street saved the hedge fund, and in 2008, the central bank saved Wall Street. Now the question is, who is going to save the central bank? Jim says that the only organization left with a clean balance sheet that can save the central bank is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Global elites know that the system is unstable and it will collapse eventually. Once things start getting ugly, which seems like it's already happening, they will intervene in order to implement their solution. In the first step, the system will be frozen. Even the amount you can withdraw from the ATM will be limited to a small amount, only to buy food and gas. Once the system opens, we will not have dollars as a major world currency. The dollar will be just like any other local currency, such as the Mexican peso. Now you might wonder what the major currency will be if the dollar is going to lose its position. Well, the answer is the IMF's currency called SDR, special drawing rights. SDR is also known as the world currency, and IMF itself is known as the World Central Bank. The author says that the goal of the elites is to create one world order, one world government, one world currency, and one world taxation. They know that their plan is not very popular, and they have been trying to build it piece by piece since 1969 by changing legislation. In normal conditions, no nation would agree to surrender all its power to a central government, especially the United States. But once there is chaos and blood in the street, the elite's plan will be introduced as the best solution. By the way, the weakening of the US dollar is part of the plan. The US is the strongest nation, and they will not want to give up control easily. But once the dollar falls and a crisis hits the country, people will want a solution. During tough times, such as war, people want a strong central government, and they are willing to sacrifice and accept the solutions coming from the government. This time, we will not have a real shooting war, but instead, we will have a financial war, which is much worse than a real war. Financial war impacts every country, every city. It enters every shop and every house. If this solution works and SDR becomes a reserve currency, it will be quite inflationary. If it does not work, then there is a possibility that we will go back to the gold standard, but personally, I highly doubt that will happen, and here's why I think that. If you own a McDonald's restaurant in the center of the city, would you be happy if someone opened a KFC just next to you? In the same way, banks would not be happy if the gold standard is applied because it limits their business. Part 3. Finally, in this part, I will share Jim's strategy for protecting yourself for the coming crash. If I tell you that we will definitely have inflation, you would know exactly what to do, right? You would buy hard assets such as gold, silver, and land. On the other side, if I tell you that we will have deflation, you would also know what to do. You would keep more cash and buy bonds. Jim says that we are at the edge of the knife and we can go to either side. He says that you should be prepared for both. He calls it the barbell strategy. As you know, the barbell has 3 parts: the weight on the left, the weight on the right, and the middle rod that holds both parts together. One side of the barbell should contain inflationary assets such as gold, silver, and land. The second side of the barbell should contain deflationary assets such as bonds. Finally, the middle connector should be cash. Many people don't like cash and don't want to hold it because it does not have a yield, but according to the author, you should have cash for 3 reasons. First, cash is a hedge against deflation. During deflation, the value of cash goes up. Second, it reduces the volatility in your portfolio. If either side of your portfolio becomes volatile, you can sleep comfortably and you don't have to sell anything to survive. You will be the one who can go out shopping during volatile times. Third, cash gives you options. If you see inflation or deflation coming, you can easily pivot to the opposite side. By the way, Warren Buffett is known for holding an enormous amount of cash in his portfolio. He waits for the crash to happen and then goes out shopping and buys companies that are on fire sale. Making money and preserving money are 2 different things. Many people make a lot of money, but they can't preserve it. There's an interesting story in the book describing how some people preserve their wealth over hundreds of years. Near the end of the book, Jim recalls a dinner with an old, wealthy Italian family. This family had preserved their wealth through 31 generations, for 800 years of market ups and downs, through epidemics, pandemics like the Black Death, countless local, national, and even 2 world wars. Jim asked this family a simple but insightful question. How does a family keep its wealth for so long? It does not seem real. There must be a secret. The family's response was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It is 3 1/3s. The family kept 1/3 of their wealth in real estate and land, the next third was in gold, and the final third was in valuable art. For an ordinary person like you and me, it can be quite hard to own museum-quality art. But gold and real estate sounds relatively easy to do, especially gold. The author recommends allocating 10% of your investment portfolio to gold and silver. I strongly recommend reading the book. Thanks for watching.